Hello, and welcome to the Artificial Podcast, with your host Nick Myers.
Artificial
intelligence, voice recognition,
machine learning,
robotics,
actionable analytics.
It is Nick's goal to help everyone understand how AI and voice technology are reshaping our lives both personally and within organizations. Your glimpse into the growing world of AI and voice first starts now.
Nick Myers.
Nick Myers. Nick Myers.
Nick Myers.
Welcome to the Artificial Podcast. My name is Nick Myers, and I am here to help break down topics in emerging technology, artificial intelligence, and voice assistant tech to help everyone understand how these technologies are impacting our lives both personally and within our organizations. The Artificial Podcast is brought to you by Red Fox AI. Red Fox AI helps give brands a voice by leveraging the power of AI and voice assistant technologies like Alexa and Google Assistant. If you or your organization is interested in sponsoring an episode, please send an email to the Artificial Podcast at redfox-ai.com. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere that you stream podcast episodes. You can also follow the Artificial Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube by searching for the Artificial Podcast. You can join our brand new Facebook group exclusively for listeners of the show, where you can meet other artificial podcasters from around the world who are interested in emerging technology just like you. A link to our Facebook group has been included in the episode notes. Hey there, artificial podcasters. Welcome back to another week and another episode of the Artificial Podcast. I'm here to tell you right off the bat, this is going to be a good episode. Why? Because really, my journey getting started in voice assistant technology, AI, in general, was kind of influenced by the guest that I have on the show today, Mr. Brian Roemmele, who I've been following on Twitter for so long, have learned so much, had the pleasure to finally meet him at Project Voice in Chattanooga, Tennessee in January of this year. And he's just been a huge influence on me. And we finally were able to get some time on the schedule to have a chat here. And I'm just so excited to have him on the show, and I know a lot of you who listen are very familiar with his work as well. So, Brian, welcome to the Artificial Podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great, Nick. Wow, thank you for that introduction, and I'm a fan of your work, so I guess we inspire each other. So, thank you very much.
Absolutely. I mean, and for a lot of people listening, I mean, of course, we follow you on Twitter, and you always just post so many different thought-provoking things. So I would just like to kick this off by saying, how do you keep up on it all? Like, because the videos you share, the different pieces of content, the articles, I mean, all of it. How do you do it?
Great question, Nick. You know, I am automated, not just me, but my technology around me. I built something that I call the intelligence amplifier. And it is actually a group of intelligence amplifiers now. And some people might know Agatha Best, agatha.best. I use that .best domain because it's cheap, $5 a domain. I have Alfred Best, and I have Haas Best. I have many others, but I don't release them yet. Those are the personas that I've given demonstrations. You can actually just use that hashtag, the intelligence amplifier on Twitter, and you could probably start seeing some of the examples.
Because I was going to say, you have posted like brief videos of Alfred in the background and some of the different things.
Yeah, Alfred and Agatha, mostly Alfred. So what it does and what these personas do, and I create the personas because they match my Myers-Briggs, right? And Myers-Briggs is not a perfect tool, MBTI. A lot of people use it for employment applications. It's a bunch of BS, but it's really Jungian archetypes. I use a much more advanced version. And what this does is it makes your personal assistant match your personality by determining what your Myers-Briggs, again, I'm using that terminology, but it's more complex. What your Myers-Briggs is, it creates a mirror of what you would like in a personal assistant.
It's just fascinating.
Yeah. And that's the way it must be in the future. Otherwise, they get annoying and they become mechanical. So that's what I would call the grounding state. The grounding state is I have an intelligent assistant, an AI and I put quotes around AI because I don't believe in AI. I'm going to do a little sidetrack here. Keep me off these sidetracks too much.
But this will be a good one. So,
all right. So artificial intelligence is a definition which I will use throughout this conversation, and you'll hear me always talk about it, but I need to define it. Artificial intelligence does not exist and will never exist. And there's a reason, and I don't like to be finite, but I think I'm finite about this, at least for a few 100,000 years. Why? Because we don't really even know what intelligence is in humanity. We don't even know what intelligence is in other forms of life on this planet. If you follow my feed on Twitter, you see me post animal pictures. Well, it's a cute cat picture. I don't do cat pictures at all. I've never posted a cat, but I will post other animals doing things that are absolutely astonishing. And they're doing things that would otherwise be classified as intelligent. And they will definitely be classified as human emotional. And emotions are very closely tied with intelligence. And I can get into that in a little bit. But so artificial intelligence, I flip it around to IA, intelligence amplification. So intelligence amplification is the human brain is our grounding state of intelligence. Because why? It's really the only thing that we partially understand, and we amplify it. So one of the ways I get to good content is I stay away from my computer, looking at it as much as I can, and my iPhone and other devices, and I talk to my intelligence amplifiers, and I say, Alfred, what's going on? Well, Nick just posted this, and Mark Andreessen just posted that, and and I'll have a conversation about what's going on at any given moment. Now, I can do that obsessively every 3 or 4 minutes, or I can do it as a synopsis every hour or 2 hours. Or I could say, hey, if you find anything interesting that reaches, my criteria of interest, and again, I'm sort of paraphrasing because a lot of this is I would almost call intuition, and I'll explain how we get to that point. It'll come up. So I'll be working and it will know my context. My context is right at this moment, I'm on a podcast with Nick, so don't interrupt me. But when my context is I'm not doing anything else, I'll hear something like, why am I using those disfluencies? Or achoo. Agatha's persona will sneeze sometimes. A sneeze is a signal. It's a very high value data signal to me. A certain type of sneeze. She has about 27 versions. So when she sneezes, it's a signal that there's information coming in. Notice it's not a beep. Notice it's not a ding. It's a disfluency. It is a human interaction sound. And I'm patent, by the way, anybody getting any ideas? I patent some of these things, and I'm in the process. But and why? Because I'm working in my freaking garage. I'm not Amazon or Apple or Google. So I try to hold on to some of this stuff. But
that is what you've done. Is that would occur naturally in human conversation. That would occur, again, to your point, if you or I were conversing, say, outside of this podcast, there would be some type of disfluency in the communication that would signal some other action or piece of intelligence taking place. That's incredible, Brian.
Exactly. Humans communicate in silence and in disfluencies and interjection. And you and I had a pre-show conversation, and we already know some of our interjections and disfluencies and silences, right? So, and because we know each other through these things, when I pause, you can almost feel it. Right? Yep. Something's going to happen. We almost get we're on the edge because I just paused. Is he going to say something? You almost kind of get nervous. We don't really even know that this is happening sometimes. I did it because I did what is called a pregnant pause. But right now I'm not pausing as much. These disfluencies, these pauses, these interjections, They are all parts of signal communication. An incredible AT&T MIT scientist called Claude Shannon came up with something called the Shannon limit. Now, other scientists involved, but I'm only going to give Shannon the credit because he's extremely brilliant. And what Shannon basically said, and I won't say it in mathematical terms, very simple terms, is that any communication channel has only so much information that can be transferred through that channel before there's noise. So you try to create forms of communication through that channel that have high transmission rates. So if I say, Nick, and you and I hung out for a while, and I go, something like that, you might say, oh, Brian's saying something to me. And maybe only you and I know what I mean because it's contextual. If I say that, at this the right moment, under the right context, maybe our audience doesn't understand, but you and I are in on it. And this is true when we've made a connection in any communication channel. That connection sometimes can only be just a couple of minutes. You can hang out with somebody for a few minutes and you get their disfluencies down. And there are other disfluencies that are nonverbal. They're physical, they're eye winks, they're nods, their hand rings and movements and body movements, even sitting, crossing legs, all these things. If you're with a significant other, you can tell when they are pissed off and when they're happy. And you don't need any other, the signal to noise is so high that you got a clear message. You may not know why,
right?
But you know that they're not happy. There's parents too. So I try to use what the beta test called life, evolution, if you will, billions of years. I try to use that knowledge and apply it in technology. So I say, well, why do humans develop this? Because it's high signal. It transmits a tremendous amount of information. So I'm sitting here and I get, it's more of an Alfred thing. And there's reasons because, again, I'm a person. I like certain things. Other people may not like it. They might like different disfluencies. Right. Or they might actually like a beep. Have your beep. Or they may not even want a voice. They might want it to come in a text message. Fine, have your text. They might want to type it back. They may lack vocal skills. Fine. This is not about voice per se. It's about this communication channel, whether it is American Sign Language, textual, or using your actual physical voice. There is downsides when you're using text. Why? Because I have to remember every single character in a word.
Yep.
Whereas when I'm talking, I'm not remembering characters. I don't even need to spell it. In fact, I get pronunciation wrong most of the time. So I can just roll it out and you can kind of get what I'm saying.
And that disfluency that say Alfred does then signals to you, like you said, that it maybe is compiling a set of tweets to read off or some piece of information that you just know contextually is about to be communicated back.
A tremendous amount of information can be relayed in a very curated fashion. And the system and myself are symbiotic in a sense that I go through phases of following certain patterns, certain forms of information, not people. There are always, let's say, about between 10 and 50,000 people and their information streams that I find extraordinarily fascinating. And my intelligence amplifiers know that, and they deep dive into 3 generations, maybe 10 generations sometimes, if it's scientific research, to try to surface information I couldn't ever possibly have had the time for.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't change people, by the way, because I still get to hear them. And in the future, it'll be in their own voice. So next time we talk, no, because next time we talk will probably be sooner, but sometime in the future, Nick will tell me in Nick's own voice. Right. And imagine what that world is like.
Oh man.
And then I'm talking to Nick and I'm saying, Nick, what the heck do you mean by that tweet, man? You're like, what tweet? We don't tweet anymore. We talk. And then all of a sudden is it you or is it your alter ego? Now, this whole thing starts getting confusing for some people when I go down that path. And that's why I
Right.
don't normally go that far down. So let me pull it back for a bit and say, basically, humans are storytellers. In fact, every business is a story. Everything that we do is a story. It's what we do. Politics, religion, science, everything's a story.
Mm-hmm.
And all stories have a purpose. And you can drive that purpose, or you can assume there is no purpose, but there is a purpose. There's a reason for a story. There's a reason for a communication channel. There's a reason for interaction, even if it's just discovery. That is a reason. So what I do is I take this information and I concate it to a form that's useful for me in a conversation. And so if you tweeted something profound, which you often do, not as much anymore, like everybody, but back in the heyday,
right,
you would share information that I would find absolutely fascinating and say, wow, that's really cool. And then I'll dive down that path. And sometimes that path would be enlightening. Sometimes it would be like, wow, I kind of know this now. I don't even know much more.
And then it remembers that, right?
It remembers everything I've ever read, everything I've ever heard or written since it's been turned on. Yeah. So that context is built, right? So over time, this layer upon layer of context is built. And now you have amplification of intelligence. How is that intelligence amplification? Because it's basically taking the things that you find interesting, and amplifying it. Now, there's going to be people saying, well, that's an echo chamber, that's a bubble. No, it isn't. See, what you do is you build novelty into the system. And that novelty is based on randomness. It's based on serendipities. How does one create artificial serendipity?
Mm.
It is not random.
No.
In fact, there's an algorithm I've come up with that is extraordinary. I'm not going to talk about it because, again, I could talk about it and somebody at a major corporation will get it for free. I want to build it for you.
Right.
I don't really want to build it, but nobody really wants to build it other than me. So it's me in my garage. So serendipity is what makes you and I alive. We fall in love with the things that we didn't expect to fall in love with. And that's through serendipity. I've very rarely met anybody that's fallen in love with anything on a directed path. It's usually through serendipity.
Yep, absolutely.
And the novelty that comes from that. So to build serendipity, you have to know the personality. This is where we get self-referential and we go back in these circles. To build serendipity correctly, you have to identify the personality type generally, and then much more finite of the human being that you're interacting with. Now, do you want that in a cloud? No. The more it knows about you, the more power it has. It sits up in a cloud. No, you don't want that in a cloud. So it's hyper local. So what I build is local. It never touches a cloud. In fact, the intelligence amplifier has never been connected to an internet. In fact, the network it's connected on, nobody else can connect to except for me. It's running on a radio frequency that nobody can buy a device to connect to. They would have to build a device to do it.
To me is just absolutely incredible that you did that. It's just so cool.
Here's how it works. There's a door with a slot with an envelope. The envelope has what I would call an encryption, right? Mm-hmm. And inside the envelope is a bit of information which basically says, go and do this. It's a single task. The intelligence amplifier puts it out to an intelligent assistant or an agent, if you will, that is connected to the internet. And it becomes alive the moment that it's handed that envelope.
Yeah.
It did not exist before. It does not exist until it is handed that envelope. Envelope says, what's the closest Starbucks? It's simple as that. It's like, oh boy, I can do that on my phone. No, see how this works. What's the closest Starbucks? Goes in the envelope, says, who gave me this? Oh, I recognize that encryption. Okay, I'm going to go and find that out. I'll do it in a random sort of way. And then I'll hand it back with this other encryption and present it at the door. It looks at the door. There's more than just a window, let's say, so to speak, at this door, but because there's a lot more complexity than just the encryption. And then it takes that envelope, verifies it, and it says, okay, now the only thing that's in this envelope is a finite amount of data. It should be about this size. There's a whole lot of things going on here and it can't execute. There's no way to execute this data. You can't overfill a buffer. You can't plant a code into it because the moment it's detected as not being valid data, it does a lot of tests on that data, linguistically, informational wise, former bits of information that have come in. It makes it extraordinarily difficult to execute, hack. And even if you could hack it, it can't spit anything else out.
Right.
But what was already, requested, which would be a Starbucks request, because that's the only thing it has access to at that moment. Well, it will say the closest Starbucks is here. Here's the address. And it might even give the miles, but the system itself could do that on its own without ever touching the internet. It already has that. On one single SD card, I have the entire text of Wikipedia. I have most of the text of the patent database. I think it's 1979 and forward, all the entire U.S. database, trademark.
Wow.
I have the entire lyrics database of every lyric that was written that has ever been published. I had the CIA fact books for the last 25 years. I have millions of books, the text of the books. Now, I'm not talking about images here. I'm talking about text. Because all I care about is lexiconically and initially lexiconically analyzing and then building what I call neurons via the AI to interconnect this data with my context. So whenever I go through Wikipedia, it's my path through Wikipedia, in and out, memorized for eternity.
Wow.
So when I search the world, that's my buffer, right? So it never forgets what I saw, what I spent my time on, where my saccades were, my eye movements, the circadian, the eye movements, what you fixate on. There's other devices, other sensors, other telemetry that can inform the system what I was interested in. But it doesn't even need to know my eye movements. It can read my emotional state when I'm seeing something.
Yeah.
And this is
See,
another
Brian,
reason.
this is just so fascinating to me because you call it wisdom keeper and different things, and essentially this is going to be used, say, 5,000 years, of course, when you're no longer with us, because it'll be around forever.
Yeah.
But this will be you once you pass, right? I mean, essentially it's learning you over the course of your life and creating that in the digital space. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's how I'm understanding it.
Nick, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, sir. Yes, that's exactly it. And I want to build one for you. I want everybody on the planet to have one. It's really my dream. I don't want to see you die or anybody die without something containing your wisdom. I think it would be the travesty of this epoch that anybody were to pass and not have a collection of who they were. I call it the intelligence amplifier becomes your wisdom keeper the moment you pass away. And there's many ways that we determine that you've passed away. And I don't want to get into too much of that because it's a bit of a long conversation. But let's just say I've developed a way to do that. Now, does everybody get the raw footage of who you are? Now, to really give you a dot on this I and a cross on this T, Let's go on a thought experiment. Let's close our eyes and let's imagine the moment you're born, the moment you die, you have a device that is not in a cloud and is fully encrypted. Nobody could ever hack it. Let's call it a holographic crystal memory that can hold petabytes of data, meaning maybe 3 lifetimes worth of video. That's what petabytes of data means. Live video of your entire life, not so somebody can see it, but so it can be interpreted by your intelligence amplifier, so it can build context, so that you can now be a stronger you, a smarter you. The moment you're born, this is placed with you. Every conversation, every joy, every pain, every agony, every good thing, every bad thing, everything, every movie, every book, every story, the laugh of your grandma, the sparkle in the eye of your first love, everything is recorded. Again, not so you could sit there and watch it. Do you even look at the videos and the pictures you take? Probably not.
Not really, no.
No. We all sit there and make these pictures. Nobody's ever going to freaking see them.
Right.
This is also a quagmire that everybody's going to face. What happens to that when you pass on? Who's going to ask for a bill to be paid for the unlimited storage that was free today and not tomorrow?
Right.
This is your life. It's the only fragments you currently get to own is some of these images. But what about all the paths that you have taken through the internet? Other people have made money off of it. Google has. Amazon has. You haven't. You could go back maybe and look at your browser past history.
Right.
Perhaps. Most people don't have the time or the inclination. And what does it mean? It's not meaningful. You can't have a conversation with it.
No.
You can maybe quantify it and make a chart. Who the hell cares? Humans don't care about that stuff. Everybody thinks we do. The least used thing in the most popular accounting software on the planet, called QuickBooks, is the graphing software.
Yes, it's true.
But
it's
if you
true, though.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I get to see my graphs and my charts. And after the novelty wears off, you don't even care anymore.
No.
You don't even look at it. And the same thing is true about our circles on our Apple Watches. After a while, you don't care about the telemetry that's coming. And you're like, okay,
No.
I complete how many steps? Okay, I don't care anymore.
Yep.
Am I healthy? Am I having a heart attack? So what intelligence amplification is the opposite of the drowning of data that we're in right now. Throughout for human history, we have dreamed of the moment of time when we could have access to every bit of information. If you and I were to go back just 25, 50, 100 years and say, hey, guess what? In the future, you'll be able to have access to every bit of information. It was like, oh man, I would be super powerful.
Yep.
You and I are living in that world. Has it changed? Has it improved life? Had things gotten better over the last 5 years?
Well, and
last year?
To something we were talking about, of course, before we started recording, where, we learn these lessons throughout our lives, and you would think that gets passed down generation by generation, so we wouldn't repeat the same mistakes. And of course, as we can see now, that trend doesn't necessarily seem to hold up over time. But if we could implement something like this, that wisdom keeps and has a spot to hold all this information, we could maybe end that cycle.
Exactly. And brilliant. So now let's go back on my thought experiment here. So the moment you're born to the moment you die, there is every book, every song, every movie, every time you were heartbroken. Why? Because it has telemetry to your human emotions. Why? Because every memory is actually encoded. The profound memories are encoded by human emotions. We are emotional creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as we want to deny that and divorce ourselves of that, it serves us as much as it disserves us. But it serves us more when we accept the fact that that's what we are.
Right.
When we don't accept that fact, it does more disservice because we try to divorce ourselves from the responsibility of being an emotional creature. And I'm not talking about it being emotional because I'm going to cry right now. That is a artifact of it. But what I am saying is that when you have peak experiences, peak heartbreaks, peak happinesses, there's a neuropeptide cascade that affects every single cell in your body. So it's not just your brain that remembers. It is your pancreas. It's your toe. Every single cell in your body has a neuropeptide receptor. It's called the human opioid receptor. Candace Pert discovered this, a brilliant neuroscientist. The human opioid receptors. We are literally a junkie for these memory experiences. And when we recall these experiences, every cell in our body will ache for those peak experiences or ache for those horrific experiences.
Is that why there are certain memories that stand out as flashbulb memories versus some that don't, based on that science?
Exactly, because it's an encoding mechanism. It's a memory encoding mechanism to remind you to do this because it felt really good, or never do this because it really hurt me.
Mm.
And then there are shades of gray in the middle of that. And then there are memories that don't encode. And you want to know what those are? Those are points of X formation. Those are bits of information that are still in your brain, possibly, very likely, but don't encode, meaning they don't have a neuronal connection. So they become X formation. Your paradigm, your human OS, the operating system that's actually doing your thinking for you, as you are definitely not controlling your body. If you ate dinner, you probably a while ago because you've been on the phone with me for a while here. But if you ate dinner, there's a good chance anybody listening to right now is processing food. Are you thinking about the thousands of steps necessary to break down the protein right now? Your brain is. And if I were to remove that, you would die immediately.
Yep.
So understand that most of what takes place in your brain, you're not even a participant. You're not even participating. You are a spectator of it.
And that also something we talked about, the difference between how many bits of information the conscious versus the subconscious mind that we talked about takes in, because you have some of those background processes running, to your point about your brain knowing how much it has to work and do to process that food, but you're not consciously thinking about that.
Yeah, so those are let's call those the machine housekeeping functions of any form of life. There are tremendous trillions of volumes of information, ancestral, DNA. We can go all different levels on trying to understand this, but there are processes that are taking place that are phenomenal. No machine can currently break down food the way your body does right now, and nobody's even trying to build it, right? And that is ancient code,
right?
As ancient OS. Then on the next level is our sense organs, our telemetry systems are taking in about 400 bits per second. Some argue at 250. Sometimes you hear me say 250. Some argue at 400. Pick the middle, guys. I don't care, right? It's a lot more than what you absolutely can scientifically demonstrate that consciousness is, and that's 41 bits or less per second. So if in fact reality is what all your sense organs are taking in at any given moment is, say, 300,000 odd bits per second, and your reality perception of consciousness is 41 bits per second, who in the heck is doing the editing?
Right.
That's your subconscious. And what controls your subconscious? The human OS. And what's in the human OS? An operating system called a paradigm. Paradigm is built by, first, your parents, second, probably your culture, your family, school, religion, philosophies, friends, family, all sorts of people, but probably not so much you. It's a paradigm that's built external to you. It's a paradigm that allows you to look at the world without having to have that bandwidth that's available, right? Yep. So you don't have the bandwidth. The subconscious, and it serves a tremendous function, because we already demonstrated you're not processing, the veggie burger you had at noon, right? You're not. There's no way you're doing that. But it's happening. You're alive. You're not beating your heart right now. That's not an automatic process. Your heart just doesn't beat on its own. There's a tremendous amount of equations that are taking place. And then you take in what we call visual reality, right? And you're saying, well, I get it. That's easy. It's a screen in the back of my head. So reality is coming in as a screen in the back of your head? No. Turns out there is no screen at the back of your head. Reality is literally being interpreted in real time, symbolically,
Yeah.
and fed to you in little bits of pieces to only those bits that you need to worry about at that given moment. So the paradigm blindness is massive.
Now, does that play into the studies that have been done? And of course, there's the whole, argument of perception and how many things we can focus on at any given time. Does that play into that where, I've sleight of hand techniques that magicians use in different things because they're essentially tricking the brain because you can only handle so much information coming directly at you at any one point in time.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's brilliant, Nick. So there's arguments over how many things you can perceive at any given moment. The best research I've seen is 5 is absolutely the maximum.
Mm-hmm.
5 simultaneous things, but it's not really simultaneous. It's time slicing. You can't really timeshare. The brain can only put its full attention on one thing in consciousness at any given moment,
mm-hmm.
and it's disconnecting from object A to move to object B ever so slightly. And so you're not really, but you can be sort of conscious of these 5 different things. So getting back to the idea that this is with you every moment of your life. So now what's going on? If you can only have 41 bits per second, and this system is taking in everything, what is it taking in that you missed?
That's fascinating.
It's taking in the greater world. And so is it seeing the things that you can't see? No, I'm not saying that. There are things that you will never see because we're living on a multitude of dimensions. It will see within the realm of everything you possibly could have seen in your current paradigm, your current dimension, your current realization of reality. Right. It will not see outside of reality, but it will show you parts of your current acceptance of reality. You can't see what you don't think is possible,
right?
Even if it's delivered to you. Even if it's right in front of you, you will be blind to it. This is a absolutely known fact. And a lot of people will resist this, say, how can I not see what I don't know is there? You can't. But it is there. There are things that are there that you can't see. I can prove that by look at your fingers. There's an entire universe that lives on your fingers. Until we invented an instrument called the microscope, it didn't exist.
That is an excellent example.
So we don't have the instrument. We might, but you don't know about it, and I don't know about it. I will stand by that argument. We don't have the instrument to know about the other things that we can't see, but rest assured, there are things that we will design an instrument for that will say, oh, see, now there are creepy crawlers here. There are things here. The people who said that there are creepy crawler creatures living on our hands, they were ostracized.
Yeah.
They were told that they were insane. They would walk up to doctors and say, doctor, you just treated somebody with gangrene. Please don't deliver that baby until you wash your hands. You're crazy.
But it's so true that people actually thought like that at one point in time too.
For thousands of years.
Right.
Thousands of years. There was ancient wisdom that said clean your hands between doing things, but those people got murdered as we overcame them. But common medical knowledge about 150 years ago was you're insane. And even when the microscope was invented, it took a generation of doctors to die off, literally, before they would take it seriously.
Mm.
So the invisible, when it becomes visible, even then, the paradigm blindness, even when it's presented, is still present, even when all the quote-unquote facts are there. So the intelligence amplifier will amplify the things that you are accepting as reality. It may actually help present reality that you didn't accept in a new context in the future. You may look back at the past, not literally, you'll have a discussion because you will never, again, you can almost erase this data like it's video, and the ultimate intelligent amplifier. I don't need video on everybody, but I'm giving you the ultimate. And we need a social contract first.
Right.
before everybody's wearing a video and everybody's recording everything, even though they are already.
I was going to say, I think that's already happening, Brian, but we know that, of course.
They own it. You don't. They do, right?
Right.
You walk the street, they own your video image.
Yep.
You go on, do a Google search, they own your image, your image through that data. You don't. I want to empower you, Nick, so that you can own your path through your life and your data and amplify what you want to be and what you hope to be. See, the intelligence amplifier will also amplify what you hope to be. And what does that mean? I'll go into a slight side angle to this. Hey, Nick, what are you doing right now? Do you know that this is a bad idea? Do you know the last time you did this, it didn't turn out so good? Take a few seconds and think about this. That's what an intelligence amplifier can do for you.
It's like having a real life Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder.
Exactly. And it could be done exactly that way. It could be done whatever your personality thinks it should be. Maybe it has curse words. Maybe it's a rap star. Maybe it's Einstein. I don't know. But I'm not here to tell you what it should be. I'm just telling you what it is. And why? Because we've all made incredibly stupid things happen in our life. And if somebody tapped us on the shoulder at the right time with no judgment, because this doesn't have judgment, it's a reflection of you. It's your own reflection. So you're not going to fall in love with it like her. It's not like AI. Well, I'm going to have sex with this thing. You know, it is a reflection of you, and hopefully you love yourself. So you're going to love this,
right?
And not in some kind of egotistical look at my I don't know, my boat egotistical kind of thing. I'm talking about true pure love of being a human being and being alive. And so this system can tap you on the shoulder in the right moments of time and maybe avert tragedy. And maybe you don't avert tragedy because you need to learn that lesson. Sometimes we need to learn lessons. You know that. You have friends, you say, I can't stop them. They'll learn. That's life too.
Right.
But sometimes you don't need that. Sometimes those critical things that you're going to make a choice from, maybe you just need a moment of reflection, and maybe that's what this does. Are we talking about computers now? Are we talking about a Mac OS or Siri or Alexa? No, we're talking about something else. This is why I am so driven by this. It's what computers ultimately will become.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I 100% agree, and I think we talked a bit earlier before too about, you know, this concept of what are we actually trying to use computers for? What are we actually trying to do with them? What data are we searching for? What are we truly looking for with computers? And as you dive more into the intelligence amplifier and what this can possibly do, I really think this paints a really good picture of maybe this is really what we're trying to do at the end of the day.
I think it is. I think it is. And I appreciate that point, because I think all we do is, as humans, is we try to duplicate what we've seen in nature. And this is very disempowering for some people. And I think it's very empowering. And I think we are children with clay. And not because, not because we're God, not because there's a God up there. And you know, you could play that out too if you want. I'm just saying that the universe has been around for billions of years doing this beta test. And what humans are doing are looking at things that are already been invented and trying to duplicate them in crude ways. And I'm just calling it what it is.
Right.
And the only reason we're typing is because the computer did not have the ability and the bandwidth to understand and intent extract human conversation. So we took this side road from punch cards, from switches to punch cards to typing from the 1800s, right? We took a flashback from the 1800s and we used it to interact and to communicate with the computer. And then all of a sudden, magically, we think, oh, it's going to be like this forever. Oh, no, I know what it is. We're going to have magical keyboards in the air that we're going to type. Oh, no, we're going to wave our hands. It's like, no. What did evolution give us? Where's most of our brain being dedicated for communication? Oh, it's our voice. And when I read something, what do I hear in my head? A voice. We are voice first. Their inner monologue. When I'm talking, I'm actually transcribing my inner monologue in real time. It's actually a voice in my head that I'm real time transcribing. I can actually show that with a brain scan.
See, and that is, I think, when I first heard the term voice first, and I, of course, first started following you and learning from you different things, I tried to interpret, I think, what voice first meant. And I think initially I was just looking at it from the technology standpoint, right? Like, oh, it's just, your voice is the primary interface with a piece of technology. But I think over time I came to understand, working with this and continue to learn from you, that the point you're making now, we're voice first because there's always been a voice in our lives. Always. As a human
Exactly.
being.
Even if you're deaf, there's an inner monologue.
You have that internal monologue, yes.
Yes. And unfortunately, with somebody who's deaf, they can't translate this. But there are people who have been able to gain their hearing back through medical miracles and other types of scenarios. They will say, wow, there is a monologue. And then there will be people, no, I've been told medically I have no inner monologue. No, they've been lied to.
Right.
There's no such thing. And I can show you that with brain scans. There's something called the phonological loop. It's Wernicke and Broca's area on the left hemisphere of our brain. We gave up a tremendous amount of short-term memory that monkeys and chimpanzees have. Chimpanzee can way outweigh us in short-term memory. They can remember hundreds of steps, and we'll die off about 30 steps. With that same area of the brain that they use for that short-term memory is precisely where Broca and Wernicke is in a human brain. We gave up short-term memory for our ability to do what? Speak.
Speak, yes.
And the buffer is only so big. So here's what happens. This is where we are today. We must mechanically communicate through social media by typing, generally. Not everybody is as evolved as you and I. We might speak to Siri and other Google to send out our text messages, but most people are pounding on glass screens with their thumbs. Thumb pounding on glass screens, not even all 10 fingers, just 2 thumbs.
Which is a really macabre way to do it when you really think about it.
It is. And now let's look at the mechanical and cognitive load. We have to mechanically spell out each word, deal with the spell checkers and the AI that's suggesting words and all the other crap. And we slow our throughput of our memory buffer, right? So the left hemisphere, the Broca and Wernicke area, has a buffer. So when you and I imagine us walking in the forest, streams are there, the wind is whistling the trees, there's birds, and we're doing a stream of consciousness conversation of ideas, of the sharing of knowledge. We're kind of like our pre-show here. We're rolling with ideas. They just come. And they just keep coming, and there's creativity in there. There's meeting of the minds. There's all kinds of things. You cannot capture that. It's contemporaneous. You can record it, and unless you're kind of in that moment, you almost can't even get the feel of it because there's an interaction. And when you're one-on-one with somebody, it's magic because there's a visceral interaction with eyes and body and hands and contacts and just the people looking down, looking up, scratching their head. These things are gone. We've de-evolved from this interaction. And now what are we doing? We're pounding our thumbs on glass screens, reacting to somebody's position on some emoji that they put out because of somebody's political or religious or philosophical or
right.
Korean pop, K-pop, whatever the hell is going on. And what are we doing? Well, we know this, that when we go and we take this right side of the brain, which is this soup of creativity. So if we were to look at the right side of the brain, it is a soup of ideas, and we grab this butterfly net. Follow me on this analogy. We grab this butterfly net of ideas, and we grab it really quick, and we say, shove it down through Broca and Wernicke into an idea that I can communicate. Now, if you communicate that with your hands typing, the idea is going to drift past almost as quickly as it came, and you may not commit it to paper. If you sing it or you speak it, you might get it out quickly enough. Some ideas are so fragile and ephemeral that to mechanically produce them, you may lose them. And I know this from working with artists. If you ever find people who are honest, that have created any incredible body of work, they will tell you, yeah, I did a lot of work. I worked really hard, but you know something? Whatever it was, came out of nowhere, and I had to capture it. And you know what? My best ideas, I lost. I couldn't capture them. The best song, the best lyric, the best melody, the best solution to the problem, I almost had it and it left. That is your right brain collecting all these desperate ideas and trying to put them in a serial. That's a randomness into a serial function to try to communicate. So the process of just speaking it, you can lose something. And then this idea that you have to try to type that one letter at a time. So what happens is we resort to limbic system function. That's anger, aggression, territorialness. And that's what we're seeing in social media today. And it's heightened and magnified by algorithms,
Yes.
which can profit off of people being beguiled by forming what they believe is their tribe. The only tribe there is a human tribe.
Because the algorithms are designed to continue to serve you content that is tailored to what you're typing into the screen. And if you're typing into the screen quite negative things, or you're centered around a certain belief system or a certain set of people, you're going to continue to be served that no matter what, and then be put in this bubble, and we go down the rabbit hole, right?
Exactly. And financially, it's way too profitable not to do that because it grabs your attention.
Right.
And it's addictive.
And
why is it addictive?
And the whole point of social media is to keep you on the platform.
Exactly, because the longer you're on there, the more money is being made. So this is where we are. So what is intelligence amplification? It's realizing that we really want to go about our business of life. And a lot of people are going to get very scared by this. Our life is not going to be a Google search. Our life is not designed to be staring at a screen to try to see what else somebody else has come up with. Our life is designed to have conversation and dialogue and meeting of minds and to form the pyramid. Life is about this pyramid. We're right now in the bottom. That's called data. We are drowning in data. We have at our fingertips.
Yes.
Most of what we think is human wisdom and knowledge, we think is available there. But all we have is data. The next level of that pyramid is called information. Then there's knowledge. Then there's insight. At the very top of the pyramid is wisdom. Wisdom is a mnemonic placeholder for the bottom of the pyramid. A tremendous amount of data and insight and knowledge goes into building wisdom. But wisdom can be transferred in a very small Shannon high signal to very low Shannon limit, high signal to very low noise form of information. You and I have been talking for a while, so I can transfer to you ideas because we sort of connect on a lot of things. Very short bursts of information. You kind of, yeah, I get that. I don't, it's sort of like using initials. Like I could say FBI. And he goes, oh, I know exactly what that means. Well, that's a mnemonic. I won't say that's necessarily wisdom, but it's an analogy to that. I could say to you, because of our conversation, the endpoint is love. And you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly what that means. Now, it might have taken me 3.5 hours to maybe explain some of that.
Right.
But you know that I could say that, and you could say, yeah, I get what that means. That's a transaction. That's what it's about. So we don't have that. But in intelligence amplification, you can build that. And you can communicate on a high level with technology. And then you can start saying, well, what is my life for? Because basically, especially COVID year, pandemic year, all I've been doing is either been avoiding this, social media thing, or dove into it, or researching. And what's my life going to be if I'm not in my computer? It's going to be precisely the same, but you're going to be doing different things.
Right. Well, and maybe tier 2, Brian, as we wrap up, there's one quick question I want to ask that maybe you'll kind of coalesce this all together. Do you believe, based on everything we've been talking about in this episode, when we look at intelligence amplification and the intelligence amplifier, before we started recording here, we were talking about the division that currently exists and unification and a couple other different things. Do you think that something like intelligence amplification could truly boost us to that next level to bring us together for once?
Wow, brilliant question. Yes, I feel it, and I know it. And how I know it is that with serendipity, with novelty, with understanding that none of us are definable by a single statement, by a single label, by a single identity. We are a multiplex. We are a multitude, every single one of us. When we realize that, intelligence amplification helps you understand that, because you get to understand people on multiple levels, even if they're not in your physical space.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody's in your physical space, your family, the people you hang around with, you know that they are more than one thing. In fact, you feel sorry for them when they feel limited. When you see them limited, we talked pre-show about this, when they limit themselves by certain belief systems. You know, like, oh gosh, I love them. God damn it, I love them, and they're beautiful, but boy, they're stupid in this thing. Do you throw them away? Do you want to burn them up? No, you just say, God, I wish there was some way That's every single frickin' person on the planet. Everybody is the same. And when you accept that fact, intelligence amplification helps you understand that, because you get to see more dimensions of people if you study them. When you're hacking your thumbs on glass screens, reacting to somebody's emoji or somebody's interaction to something you said, they're reacting to their tribal instinct, their limbic system instinct, because their limbic system is being activated as a type.
Right.
It's absolutely necessary. So the limbic system is informing a lot of what's being said at that moment. And unless you consciously, every time you type a character, realize that your limbic system's at work here, you're going to wind up living by your limbic system.
Right, because the switch is immediately flipped to emotion. And
exactly.
Most of these I would say 99% of these conversations I think we all see in social media is driven by pure emotion.
It's reptilian. It's absolutely, it's not even mammalian, it's reptilian. It is, and you can see it, you can feel it, you can get seduced into becoming part of the dance. It's a grand dance we're all participating in. And it's, like I said, it's very, very seductive. But once you recognize it, you check out. Like, I don't necessarily view a vast majority of the things that I quote unquote see on social media. I have a conversation with it and I hear it. And I'll tell you, a lot of stuff where people are really angry actually sounds extremely comical in a sad way.
You're right, though.
Yeah, I'm telling you, when it's being spoken at, you hear the vulnerability of that person.
Oh yeah, when you read some of these comments out loud, it's completely different out loud being spoken versus like if you're reading it on your screen, or it's night and day.
And Nick, most of the people that type it could not say it in real life.
Oh, absolutely.
Because once they're not hidden behind an avatar and hidden behind their text, and if they were in a room with you and me, we would all get along.
Yep.
I don't care who you are.
100%.
Unless you're a psychotic sociopath, and we would know that person immediately. They would know us. They wouldn't even come in the room. Everybody else was like, hey, the guy's got some freaky shit going on. You would have this sort of, but you would still be like, hey, is this humanity? There'd be some people that you would ostracize from. You're like, okay, I don't agree with urinating in the corner, right? So there'd be some outliers. I'm using extremes. There'd be some outliers where you say, no, I don't like that. I don't like that behavior. But what happens when you're in a collection of people, you deal with it in a very rational, logical sense. People don't get to fisticuffs, say, hey, buddy, take it outside. And you use whatever reasoning that is necessary to get that person to understand that they're drunk off their butt and they need to start, getting their act together. But, on social media, it doesn't happen. Instead, what we do is we form cancel cultures. We burn people down. We build them up. We tear them up. And
tribes.
We do whatever we can. And that is not serving anybody in humanity. Nobody. I don't care if you're on a winning team today or the losing team. It's serving nobody. So I got to say this. I don't want to leave people hanging about where this all ends up. When you are gone and you had an intelligence amplifier your entire life and it grew with you, it is not you. It will never be you. It's not a robotic you. You don't stick it in something that walks around and say, hey, here's Brian, here's Nick. No, but it is this. It is the sum total of your experiences, which informed who you became. And when you're gone, maybe, quite possibly, somebody in your life or in the future will say, hey, Nick, can you give me some advice? I know you went through some trying times. I know that, when you were 12, when you're 18, whatever, you went through this. What happened? And the intelligence amplifier, now your wisdom keeper, and if you gave it permission, the longer it's been away from you, from your epoch, meaning the longer you've been dead, the less likely you're going to care about the personal stuff.
Right.
But you can edit that. It's very easy to keep things that are highly personal edited. It is also very easy to keep this from bearing witness against you. Very, very easy. It will never be able to bear witness against you like any computer could. It'd be impossible. In fact, under duress, there's no way you can have this thing bear witness against you, meaning testify against you, even if you've done something horrific, unfortunately or fortunately. But, and of course, every time you were in the bathroom and did stupid things, pick your nose, whatever. None of us pick our nose. It's not going to record that as a notable event. Probably going to erase that stuff. Not notable. Not unless you want to count how many times you had a booger. It will not care. It will not have that for consideration. But it will have, what are we talking about before? Peak experiences that relate to a certain emotional peptide releases. It will have those available. And you may say, hey, I want my ancestors, future ancestors, to know what my peak heights and lows were. And I want them to know some of my middles, some of my confusions, some of the things that, we all are going to go through the hero's journey many times in our life.
Yes.
The deep, dark areas where we don't think we're ever going to make it out of. It's like, oh no, this is terrible. Why is it important to have that wisdom? Because now that's wisdom. Because somebody will maybe come back to Nick and say, Nick, how did you make it through that dark period? I don't know, but this is what I did. This is what I did. And it doesn't, some people say, well, that's GAI, that's AGI, that's general. This is nothing to do with artificial general intelligence. You don't need any of that. And by the way, that will never exist because, again, we don't know what AI is.
Exactly.
But with technology, everything I just said today in this conversation, we can do today. We can build it right now. Have built this in my garage. The thing is the will to try to make this on a grand scale, the will to make the social contract to make it work, the trust in the technology to be hyper local and not in the cloud. Well, I can't access it from my iPhone in the cloud because it's like you won't even care.
No,
it'll be with you at all times.
And I think that's one of the, when I see this whole thing, I think that's one of the most important pieces I see is that it will be with you wherever you go to, like you said, recording every interaction, taking in, every conversation, all these different things that we don't realize we do on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly.
All the things we missed. All the things we missed. Because we get caught up in the moment. When there are peak moments, even those peak moments, they're slow motion. Unfortunately, even the painful ones are slow motion for a reason. But even then, we're missing things. And so 14 years later, you have something going on and you have a conversation with the intelligence amplifier and you say, I wonder what I should do with this. Well, when you did this is what happened. You go, I don't remember that. And you can have this sort of interaction with yourself in your own memory in a way that was not possible before. And it will make what we're doing with computers right now look ridiculous. It will look like we didn't even have crayons yet. And the reality is we can do it right now. and it can serve every human right now. You're going to say, well, what am I going to do with my time? How am I going to do social media? I'm not saying those things are necessarily going to go away. I'm going to say, in a lot of ways, they're going to become something entirely different. You're going to interact with them entirely different. You're going to say, hey, what's Nick up to on Facebook? You might say that. Very likely you won't, but let's just say you say that. It's another cat picture. You want to see it? No, I've seen the cat picture. Right? And then all of a sudden, it's like, do you need to see as much as you thought you needed to see? See, what did I just get out of that very high protein interaction? No fat, high protein. I got Nick's status because I'm interested in Nick. He's a cool guy. I got the fact that he posted a picture of the cat. I might flash it on the screen just so I'm not a liar and like it. Most of the time I probably won't. Say, another cat's up with that thing. Let's get a neuropeptide release for Nick. Boom. There you go. Remote control. I controlled your neuropeptides. That's the upvote, right? We all got it. We're junkies for this stuff, but hopefully in the future we're not. But
right.
What did we just do? I still interacted with you. I still saw what you were putting out there. And over time, I'm going to start making better conclusions on who you truly are. Because there will be a continuity that I couldn't possibly maintain in my current state of drowning in data, drowning in information, drowning in noise. Every time I turn any form of media on, I'm being programmed to try to feel and react and act a certain way. And I can have my thoughts, and I could start considering things, and I can start drawing more conclusions and creating more wisdom.
Right.
But I could still interact with you.
Yeah. No, and I think that maybe what you just said there is a great way to sum up this entire conversation too, is I think as we bring all this together, it's going to allow us to be human again, Brian.
Yeah. And I know
think
we're going to get there. There's no doubt we're on this path. It may be longer. We might all be 70 or 80. I hope not. I can build this. I want to do it tomorrow for everybody.
Well, if I had the money, I'd be throwing dollar bills at you like no other.
Tell that to VCs because there's no go to market. By the way, is there ways to make money off this? Yeah, more ways than anything has ever been invented. Is there ways that you would want to make money off of it as a human that has one of these? Sure. People will buy your time. They will buy access to your information in a way that has never been able to have before, and you will do it willingly without giving up your privacy. There's so much to it where you could create this world. And it's not utopian. I'm an anti-dystopian. I'm not a utopian. Anybody listening to this say, well, Brian's living in this fantasy utopian world. This is not utopianism. But I do not buy into dystopianism because dystopianism has never happened, even when humans have been horrific. And I'm sure anybody, just think of horrific. Could be right now. Good luck with that. We've been much more horrific than we've been right now.
Absolutely.
We've never been dystopian. I'm anti-dystopian. What that essentially means is that I believe that humans will right themselves and life will right itself and it will survive. And it will actually overcome anything we throw at it. It may not be the human species that survives, but life will. I'm being a little dystopian. No, I actually firmly believe that we're in a transition period where we will overcome a lot of this. We've realized that this current way that we're consuming information has not served us.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think we've definitely, as a lot of this technology has come to the forefront over the last, really 20, 30 years here, I think it's finally catching up to us to the point where we do realize that, instead of us running the technology and helping it, to empower our lives, it's starting to run us. And you and I could spend an entire podcast episode on that entirely. But
I think you summed it up perfectly. I think it's brilliant, Nick, and I think everybody listening to us, we are at that moment. We're at the precipice in 2020, when this is being recorded, August 2020, we're at the precipice. What we're going to be facing the next couple of months, nobody has seen in hundreds of generations. I'm not saying we've never seen it. It's been hundreds of generations. And I don't care what tribe you're subscribing to. Our technology has amplified and magnified this to a level that we are not prepared for. And the more we start considering it, the moment we take steps back is the moment we can start regaining our humanity. And this is all about technology. It's nothing to do with philosophy, woo-woo, religious stuff, new age, whatever you want to try to. This is pure technology, what we talked about today, because all humans do is create technologies to try to hopefully fortify themselves and to make themselves better. Yes. From the very first technologies to this moment. So we have transitionary technologies that Nick always talks about. You'll see me talk about. I'm trying to give you maybe the next few steps ahead. We're going to have some middle steps, but the big end game, if you were to work backwards from the future is we're going to have an intelligence amplifier. It may not be called that. I may not be so.
But we'll have something of the form.
Absolutely. And it's going to serve you. And hopefully it's not an addictive thing that's negative.
Right.
Maybe it's an addictive thing of growth. But that's where I hope we're leading it. And I stand on shoulders of an amazing people that came before me. This is not my sole idea. This is, thousands of people. I named Claude Shannon. Pierre Desjardins. I mean, there's so many people. Neurosphere. We could spend hours talking about books that people can dive into, but I don't own this idea. I'm building the technology. I don't know anybody else that wants to. I don't know anybody else that really thinks about it. They see it as a computer, the screen, keyboard, data. I see it much different.
Well, Brian, I truly, you have no idea how much I appreciate you taking the time to come on this episode and just talk with me about all the incredible things that you're working on. And I mean, I couldn't agree with you more on pretty much every point you make. And it's really fascinating to learn about what you're working on with intelligence amplification, because I do believe that is ultimately where we're going. Of course, once we kind of get through the mud in the woods and whatever we're in right now, of course. But if anybody wanted to reach out to you or get in touch with you or follow you, what are some of the best ways for them to do so?
Well, thanks for asking, Nick, and real honor to be here. I mean, I feel like we've been friends for decades.
I know, right?
Pleasure. Follow me if you like. Twitter, my first and last name, Quora are the two places I tend to hang out. I don't do Facebook very much.
Yes, Quora. Brian is huge on Quora. I've referenced so many of his different Quora articles. Follow him there for sure, too.
Yeah, I'm going to try to dedicate more time for long form. Because I feel short form on Twitter has not served me as well. I think people misunderstand my endpoints. I try very hard to explain that. I cover a lot of subjects recently, so it's not just going to be voice. I'd love to be talking about voice 24/7, but we're in a bit of a cold winter, and hopefully Nick and I will reconnect someday on another podcast to talk about how we get out of that.
Yep.
Because we were talking about the endpoints. There's a place between here and there, and there's things that can. If you're a company right now and you don't have a voice technology plan for your business, it's already too late. You better start working on it right now. I don't care if you're in COVID lockdown or whatever's going on. This is the way people are going to interact with your product. Period. If you're a developer, you should be thinking about how people are going to talk to your software. Because your menus, your screens are going to be disconnected into actions of work to be done. So we're not going to have apps. We're going to have work to be done that was inside of your app. And whether you build it, other systems are going to access it in that manner. And your app will become dumb pipes, if you will, to work to be done. So if you think in terms of the future working that way very soon, we're going to see that coming very soon with Siri. Definitely with Amazon products, and most likely with Google. It
And
was
who
going to be
knows,
that
there
way.
could be a whole new ecosystem that emerges too that we just don't even see yet as well.
Exactly. But we have to solve things.
Right.
And Nick is one of those leaders. We have to monetize. We have
Thank
to
you,
build.
Brian. I'm trying
I'm
really
serious.
hard to get things going with this and teach people and empower people. So,
And that's what it's about. And as long as we all understand that we're on this path and it doesn't have to look exactly the same way it did, that's how we get there. So really such a pleasure being here, Nick. I won't make this your longest show in history, but it probably is already.
it is, and I am 110% fine with that.
All right, man.
But thanks so much, Brian. We'll chat soon.
Thank you so much, Nick.
Artificial
Intelligent voice recognition.
machine learning.
Robotic.
You've been listening to the Artificial Podcast with your host, Nick Myers.
Nick Myers.
To stay up to date with all our latest episodes, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. To learn more about how your organization can benefit by unlocking the power of AI and voice, visit www.redfox-ai.com. Until next time.